They didn't want him to be a prince or a princess, not knowing what the gender would be, which would be different from protocol. And he wasn't going to receive security.
What?
It was really hard.
This is the actual audio of the boos that the Harkles received.
Look, I was really ashamed to say it at the time, and ashamed to have to admit it to Harry, especially.
It is what it is. At least that's what they wanted, so they got what they wanted. Everybody must be happy except for William and Catherine. I think that they are suffering the most through the Harkles. Many of you, unlike me, were betting that she was going to come to the UK with the children.
Meghan back on royal property.
This changes everything. The Meghan Markle King Charles reunion at Highgrove House has royal fans completely divided. Just when everyone thought the door had finally closed, Meghan was back inside the king's private residence. Even after the headlines about Meghan Markle booed in the UK, how did this happen? Was this a genuine family reunion or a carefully planned comeback? Stay with me until the end, because what really happened at Highgrove House may completely change the way you see this reunion.
Okay, I look at it appalled, because I feel like in a way it's giving Harry and Meghan exactly what they want.
But I knew that if I didn't say it, that I would do it. And I just didn't want to be alive anymore.
On July 10th, Buckingham Palace confirmed something nobody had been told to expect. King Charles and Queen Camilla welcomed Prince Harry, Meghan, and their children, Archie and Lilibet, into Highgrove, the king's own private home, the same house where Harry played as a boy.
You know, I feel really let down.
They've not said I'm sorry publicly. We don't know about privately, but I highly doubt it. But
no photos were released. None are expected to be. And that single fact, a confirmed meeting with almost nothing else attached to it, is what has royal watchers on both sides of the Atlantic picking apart every hour that led up to it. Because here is what makes it strange. This was not supposed to happen this way. For weeks, Meghan and the children were reportedly denied the state-funded security that would have let them travel with Harry in the first place. As late as July 9th, the plan still looked unlikely enough that most commentators had written it off. Then, almost overnight, the plan changed, and a family that supposedly could not safely set foot in Britain somehow made it all the way to the king's private home without a single leak, a single photograph, or a single warning beforehand. Somewhere between Tuesday's courtroom and Friday's confirmation, something shifted, and almost nobody outside a small circle at the palace knows exactly what that something was.
Meghan gets to do a victory lap here, because to your point, she is back on royal property.
Meghan Markle will be coming to the UK with her children, but she will not be seen in public. Let's get into it.
There is one detail worth holding on to here. This was not actually the first time Charles and Harry had found their way back into a room together. 10 months earlier, in September of 2025, the two men had already sat down for a private tea at Clarence House, with almost no fanfare and even less coverage. Highgrove was not a sudden thaw. It was a second meeting, and that changes the question everyone should really be asking. Nobody reads the Clarence House meeting as the real story, but it should be. Back in September of 2025, Harry sat down with his father in London at the king's official residence with no statement, no photo, and barely a mention in the press.
It's a reward for bad behavior. And you're right, the king is in the final chapters of his life.
Everybody must be happy except for William and Catherine. I think that they are suffering the most through the Harkles.
Most people treated it as a footnote, a quick stop on Harry's way to another event in the city. It wasn't a footnote. It was the first quiet test of whether these two men could sit in a room together again after years of public attacks in a memoir, a documentary, and a string of interviews that had done real damage to the family Harry left behind.
But it's a huge issue that Meghan gets to come back to a royal property. Returning to the UK.
And I cannot believe it. Meghan and Harry are in the UK. I can't see the children in that shot anywhere.
What that T proved was simple. Contact was possible. Not forgiveness, not a full reconciliation, just proof that a door still opened when nobody was watching. And once that door opened quietly, without leaking, it created a pattern the palace could repeat. A meeting that stays private is a meeting that can happen again. That is exactly what Highgrove became 10 months later, except this time, Meghan and the children were standing in the room too. Here is what makes this pattern worth noticing. Every one of these low-profile meetings happened at a residence, never in public, never with cameras, and never with a joint statement from both sides at once. Clarence House got almost no coverage because almost nobody outside a tight circle knew about it until well after the fact. Highgrove only became a story because Buckingham Palace chose to confirm it on their own terms with a single line and nothing else.
Notwithstanding the negative headlines, they've won. And more specifically, Meghan has won.
I mean, how could he turn this trip around? And one of the obvious answers was a picture or a meeting with King Charles.
That is not how a family shares good news. That is how an institution manages a leak before someone else gets to it first. And that raises a harder question than whether they met. If the palace is now quietly rebuilding contact with Harry, one meeting at a time, then Highgrove was never just about an afternoon with Archie and Lilibet. It was the second data point in a pattern that started almost a year earlier, which means the real mystery isn't whether Charles wanted to see his grandchildren. Of course he did. The real mystery is why this particular week is the one the palace let become public at all. That's not a question with one answer. It's a question with pressure coming from more than one direction at once, even if not all of it landed in the same 7 days. The court defeat was the freshest wound, just 2 days old by the time Highgrove happened, but it wasn't sitting alone. Harry's fight to get his police protection restored had already ended in defeat over a year earlier, a loss that never really went away. It just kept shaping every trip back to Britain since. That older defeat and this new one weren't the same event, but they were the same argument, playing out twice and losing twice. Then there's a third thread, one that had been building for months, not days. For months, reports out of Los Angeles had painted a rough picture of the Sussexes' business life. Their Netflix deal, once worth close to $100 million, had already been quietly downgraded to a bare-bones arrangement. Meghan's lifestyle brand was sitting on unsold stock that Netflix itself no longer wanted a piece of. None of that broke the same week as Highgrove. It had been building since spring, a slow leak rather than a single blow. Put those three threads together, and the picture that emerges isn't one sudden collision. It's a family walking into Highgrove already carrying a fresh legal defeat, an old security loss that never healed, and a business story that had been quietly souring for months. None a single one of those forced anyone's hand. All three sitting there right as Highgrove happened is still hard to call a coincidence, because the numbers behind that third thread are worse than most people realize. Worse and far more specific than most coverage let on. As ever, the lifestyle brand Meghan built with Netflix's backing ended up sitting on more than $10 million in unsold stock, tea, jam, and baking mixes that Netflix itself eventually gave away to staff for free rather than try to sell. Traffic to the brand's own website reportedly dropped by a third in just 4 months this year, and the streaming deal that once carried a price tag close to $100 million had already been quietly rewritten into what insiders call a first look arrangement, meaning no guaranteed payment, just an option Netflix could walk away from at any time. None of that happened suddenly. Reports had been building for months about a documentary partnership that produced almost no scripted work in 6 years, about Hollywood executives growing hesitant to work with the couple, about a brand that looked glossy in photos but could not move product fast enough before the expiration dates on its own jam jars became a punchline. This wasn't speculation from a royal commentator with an axe to grind. These were dollar figures, reported by entertainment trade outlets that track Netflix's business, not palace watchers guessing at motive. So when critics say the money had dried up, that phrase now has numbers attached to it. A stalled entertainment deal, a brand losing a third of its traffic, $10 million of stock nobody would buy. That is not the picture of a couple with nothing left to prove. It's the picture of a couple whose American project had stopped delivering exactly the kind of attention attention it was built to generate. And attention, real global attention, the kind no lifestyle brand or streaming deal had managed to produce in months, was sitting exactly one afternoon away behind the gates of a house in Gloucestershire. Which is what makes the next part so hard to reconcile, because just weeks before that afternoon, Harry had built his entire defense on one argument, that Britain wasn't safe enough for his family to set foot in at all. That argument had been the center of Harry's case for years, not a side comment. He told courts and reporters that his family faced credible threats on British soil, that private security couldn't access the intelligence or firearms that official police protection could, and that bringing Meghan and the children back without it would be reckless. It wasn't a passing worry. It was the entire foundation of a legal fight he'd carried through multiple hearings and, weeks earlier, lost for good. And yet, within days of that final defeat, Meghan and both children flew into the country, traveled to Highgrove, spent an afternoon there, and left again, all without a single public sighting, a single leaked itinerary, or a single incident. If the country was genuinely too dangerous to risk it, that danger apparently vanished the moment a meeting with the king became possible. If it wasn't too dangerous, then the argument that kept the family away from Britain for years was carrying more weight in press statements than it did in practice. Neither side of that gets fully answered. Supporters point out that a short secret trip to one controlled private property is not the same as the public schedule Harry wanted protection for, an argument with real logic behind it. Critics point out that Meghan and the children still managed an undetected UK entry precisely when it mattered most, which is a harder detail to explain away. What's true either way is this: the security argument no longer stands untested. It's now sitting next to a real trip that happened without the protection Harry said his family couldn't safely do without. And that contradiction didn't stay contained to the security question. It started pulling at something else entirely, a comparison the Sussexes have spent years trying to avoid. The comparison is Thomas Markle. For years, Meghan has remained estranged from her own father, a man now in his 80s who has said publicly more than once that he wants to see his grandchildren and has been kept away. If Highgrove is framed as proof that grandchildren deserve to know their grandfather, that logic doesn't stop at the Atlantic. It points straight back at Meghan's side of the family, and critics wasted no time raising exactly that. Nobody outside that relationship knows the full history behind it, but the optics are hard to ignore once you put both situations side by side. Then there's the person who wasn't there at all. Prince William didn't appear anywhere near Highgrove that day. Instead, he spent the afternoon at a charity polo match in Windsor with Kate by his side, a scheduled public event that had nothing to do with his brother's family arriving quietly 40 minutes away. Whether that was coincidence or distance, the timing put two brothers on opposite ends of the same afternoon, one behind the private gates of their father's home, the other in full public view, doing something entirely unconnected to it. And underneath both of those sits the detail that makes everything harder to walk back. Buckingham Palace didn't just let this meeting happen quietly, it confirmed the meeting happened in a short statement while the family may still be in the country. That confirmation is now a fact on the record, one that can be measured against whatever comes next. Harry has reportedly promised his father there will be no interviews, no book chapters, no documentary footage built around that afternoon, but a promise like that has never fully held before, and there's already a date on the calendar, July 29th, when the courtroom fight Harry just lost gets another hearing. So the real test was never the reunion itself. It was what happens after everyone goes quiet. Charles got his afternoon with Archie and Lilibet, the first in 4 years, and by every account, that part was real. But the palace now carries the risk of being asked why comfort was offered the same week damaging allegations from Harry's own past were never publicly withdrawn. Harry got a working relationship with his father back, but he still has to prove the next leak doesn't come from his own side, the same side that has spoken to the press before. And Meghan got exactly what her American ventures had stopped producing on their own, a moment of real royal attention, without ever having to face a British camera or answer a single hard question in public. That's the trade sitting underneath it all. Nobody got the win they wanted without giving something up in return. If nothing leaks, if there's no book chapter, no documentary frame, no anonymous source describing what Charles said that afternoon, then this becomes the first real proof that restraint is possible on all sides. sides. If something does leak, even months from now, everyone watching already knows exactly where to look first. So here's what I want to know from you. Do you think this was Charles simply being a grandfather, or a family reaching for something bigger than that afternoon? Write your answer in the comments. I read every one of them. I'm Jane Expose, and if you want the next update on this the moment it breaks, hit subscribe now.